Hi, my name is Catherine Owens, and I am joining you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I just recently moved here from living in Brooklyn for about 10 years and working as a nanny and getting my undergraduate and then beginning this course as well. So now here in New Mexico, I'm working with some small children, very small children as a nanny, and getting to experience sort of the beginning of language, sort of when each of them were learning how to babble and how to communicate, how to relate to one another, how to get what they want, and how to sort of first interact with print and with storytelling, and how each of them responds very differently. It's definitely speaking to the importance of differentiating instruction, even in very small children. Very early on, different children are responding differently to how you approach stories and reading. For me, when I was a very small child, we were really lucky, and we had a family who focused very much on sitting down and reading together and about having an enthusiasm for language and for words and for talking about what words mean and where they come from and breaking them apart. And I learned a lot of etymology just from my parents being interested in discussing that with us and sort of fostering that interest. And I quickly became an avid reader, was several grade levels ahead. By third grade was reading like a middle school level, which caused some interesting conflicts sometimes, but was also a wonderful sort of portal for me to feel like I could understand a lot about the world at a very young age. And I remember once in third grade, I was crying to my parents that I didn't feel challenged enough by the material, and they sat me down with my teacher, and we got to have a conference, and I became a reading buddy for a first grader, and I was allowed to pick any book I wanted from the library for my own book report for the year. And I remember going into the library and feeling like I was so empowered that I could choose any book from any reading level. And I went and I chose the biggest book I could find. And it was about unicorns, and I was so excited, and it ended up being so over my head. I had no idea what half the words meant. And it helped me sort of remember where I was and sort of assess myself. And learned a lot about how to look up words in the dictionary and how to ask for support. My teachers were great. I was lucky to come up through a wonderful school system as well, which had a lot of support in literacy, whole language instruction, but also some rules and sort of the structure of how English works. And so eventually was in AP English and have a wonderful love of reading, and I think it's an incredible resource for us to communicate with each other, communicate ideas. I think I've learned a lot about who I am and what I believe in, and share a lot with the people in my life. Interesting text and interesting language and text about language and how we communicate with each other as being a really vital part of how we relate to each other. And so I think it's really important for teaching small children that text has meaning, that language has meaning, that it impacts another person, how you speak, that the language that we're absorbing and that we're then sharing with our children and our students are going to form them and form their ideas, or at least begin this conversation about how to best use language and what its powers can be and how important that is. And I think some of that comes from bringing it into a socio-emotional learning, and some of it is about differentiating between, spoken language and written language and reading words together and alone and all of those different doors and access points for different kids to have access to what is a really integral part of being a person and having relationships, and how, really giving kids a foundation where they feel like they can understand how they best use language, and what they're most responsive to, and how they can then relate to other people, have their parent read them a story, ask people nicely for something, or even beyond that to then sort of write their own feelings when they're capable of doing so, or have somebody else write their feelings, or explain something and using words and writing them. I think all of those implemented really inform the way we use language and the way we understand each other, which has made me a very verbose person. So I do wish that on other people. And I look forward to hearing about how each of you have been impacted by your language growing up, and your relationships with other people and language, and sort of how you plan to use that in your teaching, because I think everybody approaches it differently. So I'm eager to hear and learn, and I look forward to working with you guys. Thanks.